She arrived in Rome carrying 3 consecutive defeats and a ranking that had tumbled from 29 to 44 in the world. The clay season had been merciless. Ostapenko demolished her in Austria. Fernandez dismantled her in Stuttgart. Mertens crushed her in Madrid, 6-2, 6-1. A scoreline so brutal it triggered alarms across Filipino tennis circles worldwide. But what happened when Alex Eala walked through the gates of the Foro Italico, left Aryna Sabalenka, the undisputed queen of the WTA, completely speechless? This is not the story of a player having a good week. This is the story of a 20-year-old girl from the Philippines who made a decision so audacious it stunned the tennis world. And what Rome gave her in return was something no foreign player has experienced at this tournament in recent memory. The wildest part? What Sabalenka witnessed changed how the entire WTA views Eala's future. To understand why this matters, you have to go back to the decision that shocked everyone who follows Eala's career. After that devastating loss to Mertens in Madrid, she had a choice. Enter the WTA 125 Catalonia Open, where she was projected as a top seed, and where victory would have been entirely plausible. Instead, she withdrew completely. Not because of injury, not because of fatigue, because she wanted to focus every ounce of her energy on Rome, a WTA 1000 event where she would face Sabalenka, Swiatek, Gauff, and the deepest field assembled on clay all season. A player ranked 44, skipping a comfortable title opportunity to chase the summit. That choice revealed everything about who Eala truly is, beneath the quiet exterior. The clay season in European tennis is uniquely brutal. The surface punishes every weakness, exposes every technical flaw, and tests a player's mental architecture far beyond any other stretch of the calendar. For Eala, the spring of 2026 had been a waking nightmare draped in red dust. She opened her clay campaign at the Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open, where Jelena Ostapenko destroyed her in straight sets. Then came Stuttgart against Leylah Fernandez, a player she knew well, a player she had traded victories with across multiple surfaces. The clay said something different. Each defeat stung not merely because of the scoreline, but because it came against opponents she had beaten before. Momentum collapsed in under 2 hours on European courts that seemed designed to humiliate her. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected. Instead of protecting herself by aiming lower, Eala returned to the Rafael Nadal Academy. She rested, she recalibrated in complete silence, while the rest of the tour competed without her. That decision was not strategic conservatism, it was an act of absolute ambition. She does not play tennis to accumulate moderate results. She plays to compete at the summit, and Rome, with its 55,000-seat capacity and the most passionate tennis crowds in Europe, deserved her full, undivided, unapologetic focus. The Internazionale BNL d'Italia is not merely a tennis tournament. It is an event woven into the cultural DNA of Rome itself. A spectacle of passion, noise, opera-pitched screaming, and crowds that treat clay court tennis as a form of high art. The Foro Italico sits beside the Tiber River, under Italian pines, surrounded by marble statues, while terracotta dust hangs in the air like something sacred. This is not Wimbledon's polite applause. This is not Indian Wells' clinical appreciation. Rome whistles, Rome erupts, Rome waves its hands and screams player names as though the outcome of every rally constitutes a matter of national honor. When Rome adopts a player, truly adopts them, the player feels it in every cell of their body. Eala entered the main draw through direct entry. No wildcard needed, no qualifying rounds, no favoritism from tournament directors. Her ranking, battered though it was, placed her directly inside one of the most storied draws in women's tennis. She arrived unseeded, carrying 3 consecutive disappointing results. As one of the youngest Filipinos ever to step onto this particular stage, Rome noticed immediately. Social media footage circulated within hours of her arrival. Photographs of practice sessions showed Italian fans, not Filipino diaspora, not traveling supporters, but Romans themselves, pressing against training court fences, chanting her name, requesting photographs, holding makeshift signs written in a combination of Italian and Tagalog. Now here's the part that should make you understand the magnitude of what happened. One sign, captured in a widely shared image, read simply, Eala, benvenuta a Roma, welcome to Rome. The Italian public, sophisticated in its tennis knowledge and historically demanding of technical brilliance, had watched Eala's rise with growing fascination. Her US Open first-round victory in August 2025, where she became the first Filipino in history to win a main draw Grand Slam match in the Open era, had broken through language barriers and geographic distance. Italian fans, perhaps more than any other European tennis public, understand the weight of history. They understand what it means to carry an entire nation's hope onto a tennis court. They recognized that weight in Eala and embraced her for it. When her practice sessions wrapped and she walked toward the player exit, fans reached over barriers with phones extended, calling Alessandra, Alessandra, the Italian adaptation of her name that somehow sounded like it belonged to the city. She stopped for every photograph. She signed every item placed in front of her. She spoke in English, they responded in Italian, and somehow the exchange worked completely. Because the language between athlete and admirer requires no translation. But the crowd's reaction was not celebrating a player on a winning streak. They were celebrating a player who had absorbed failure and chosen, against every temptation to protect herself by aiming lower, to walk directly toward the hardest possible challenge. There is a category of athlete the Italian tennis public understands instinctively. The player who suffers beautifully, who carries defeat with dignity. Italy has produced enough of them across tennis history to recognize the species on sight. Eala is that species. The ripple effect of her Roman reception extended across WTA circles in ways that analysts are still measuring. Other players noticed. Coaches noticed. Tournament directors noticed. The question circulating through the Foro Italico's corridors was no longer merely whether Eala could navigate a difficult first round. It had evolved into something far larger. What kind of player does Alex Eala become when she finally has a stage that matches the size of her ambition? And this is where it gets personal. Because Sabalenka's acknowledgement of what she witnessed signaled something important within the competitive hierarchy. When the best player in the world sees a name and says she has something special, not because they fear that player today, but because they can already see who that player is becoming, it constitutes a form of recognition that reshapes how the entire field perceives that athlete. Eala's ranking would correct itself with time. Rankings always do for players of genuine quality. What Rome accelerated was something more durable. The widespread understanding that Eala does not merely belong on this stage, she commands it. The coaching voices that had guided Eala through her Nadal Academy recalibration watched her move across the Roman clay and saw exactly what they had hoped to unlock. An athlete whose technical foundation was always present, finally operating within an emotional environment that amplified rather than compressed her instincts. The clay surface remains her most significant ongoing project. But projects, for truly exceptional players, are simply challenges that have not yet been resolved. Rome was not a resolution. Rome was a declaration of where Eala stands, who she intends to become, and what the WTA's clay season looks like when she functions inside an environment that believes in her before the first ball is struck. For the Philippines, Eala's reception in Rome represented something genuinely historic. Filipino athletes have achieved extraordinary things across the global sporting landscape. In boxing, in basketball, in athletics, but women's tennis at the WTA 1000 level has been, until Eala, largely unexplored territory. The sight of Italian fans chanting a Filipino name across the terracotta expanse of the Foro Italico, holding signs in a language that connected Roman passion to Southeast Asian pride, was not merely a feel-good moment for Filipino sports media. It was evidence that the ceiling Eala is approaching has never existed in the precise form her career is taking. The first Filipino to win a Grand Slam main draw match in the Open era had now become the first Filipino player to receive an unreserved, organic, crowd-driven welcome at one of Europe's most passionate tennis venues. For Sabalenka, the world number one whose speechless pause in the face of Eala's reception became the tournament's defining image, there is a particular truth embedded in that moment worth understanding. Champions are not merely defined by the opponents they defeat, they are defined by the opponents they recognize. Sabalenka's willingness to publicly acknowledge Eala's extraordinary welcome, rather than deflecting or minimizing it, revealed the greatness of character that operates alongside her greatness of game. She saw something real, and she named it honestly. Alex Eala arrived in Rome, carrying the weight of 3 defeats and the burden of an entire nation's expectations. She left carrying something Rome reserves for the extraordinary few. The knowledge that when the sport's most demanding crowds encounter genuine greatness in formation, they reach across every barrier of language and geography and say, "You are one of us." That gift cannot be ranked, it cannot be ceded, it cannot be withdrawn. It is simply, permanently, hers. The question now is not whether Eala belongs among tennis royalty. The question is how long it takes the rest of the world to catch up to what Rome already knows.